as you're suggesting, females seem to have more MS than males.
Oh yeah, it's perfect. I mean,
So,
but
why
here's
is
the
that?
story. At the turn of the century, if you look at the annals of the Neurological Society of New York, they had a meeting of all the scientists who are interested in multiple sclerosis, and at the end of that meeting, they said, "There's no doubt, MS is a disease of men. Absolutely no doubt. It's a man's disease." Okay. At that time, the doctors who were interested in this were mostly around New York City. At that time, that's the peak of when methanol was used in the shoe industry. It was used in lots of industries as a solvent. And men go to work, they make contact with it, and they were developing MS. Now, we know that smoking causes multiple sclerosis. Okay, so if you smoke and develop multiple sclerosis, the methanol gets to the brain pretty quickly. It doesn't go into the stomach. And so the ratio of men and women are relatively equal. But consuming methanol is what makes the difference. The incidence of MS in women over the last 30 years has changed dramatically. Women have gone up dramatically. From 1 to 3 to 1 to 5 now. Aspartame is the major source of methyl alcohol in the United States, in the world today, probably the world. Women, and I got this literature from the alcoholic literature. Women are notorious for reacting more quickly to ethanol, even based on body size. If you have a 70-kilogram woman and a 70-kilogram guy, and they consume ethanol, the woman reacts as if she's having more of an effect in the brain from that ethanol. Why? Alcohol dehydrogenase. The woman has almost no alcohol dehydrogenase in the lining of the stomach. A man has 4 to 5 times more. Okay, this is a Johns Hopkins study which I quote. Okay, they weren't looking for anything I was looking at. They were looking for something else. Aspartame being a source, oral source of methyl alcohol, men would deplete a small amount of methanol, and again a pop, after it probably doesn't make it out of a man's stomach. But a woman, it would make it out, more likely. And that ratio is perfect. That's why the incidence of multiple sclerosis has gone up dramatically since aspartame. I told you about the differentiation, the latitudinal differentiation in MS, where it's always been a disease of colder climates. You guys know that. You've read it for years. Look at the recent literature. How amazing. It's changing. It's no longer a disease of the northern climes. Mexico, the incidence of multiple sclerosis has gone up 7 times since the introduction of aspartame. Okay. Why? Because it used to be you had to have a can of fruit or vegetable or smoke to get it, which you would more likely in the wintertime experience in the northern climes. Now, diet soda, which you drink in the summer when it's hot. But you see what I'm saying? So people drink diet soda, so the incidence in these countries has gone up dramatically. And they say now there's no longer a differential. So what can explain this? Okay. So how are we protected? Ethanol stops methanol. What ethanol does, remember the one window of opportunity where the methanol can fly in and turn to formaldehyde? Well, ethanol prefers to go to that spot. There's a 16% affinity ratio. This enzyme prefers ethanol. That's why you save lives by consuming a little bit of ethanol every day. That's why there's a U-shaped curve. Again, we don't know for sure if MS is a U-shaped curve. A recent study seems to indicate so, though. Here's the scoop. This is what you have to know. There's no alcohol dehydrogenase in your brain except in the intima and the media of blood vessels in your brain. Both Alzheimer's and multiple sclerosis is a perivascular disease. It's clear. The disease is forming from something exuding from the vessels. We've known that forever. That's the only place in your brain you'll ever find any alcohol dehydrogenase. So what happens is, this is the blood-brain barrier, that epithelial cell, that beautiful shiny coating on the inside of the vessel. Tight. Formaldehyde would never get through that. Methanol goes through like it's nothing there. It's smaller than water. No, it's not smaller than water. Almost as small as water. Goes right through, and then it meets alcohol dehydrogenase in these two layers. Formaldehyde's produced there, and then the formaldehyde oozes into the brain. This is from an article looking for alcohol dehydrogenase in the brain. From the title of the article, you would be sure that there's no alcohol dehydrogenase in the brain. So I was reading this, I was looking through the literature, I said, oh, here's the bad news. Opened up the article, and sure enough, nothing. Oh, except for the vessels. We know for sure now, vessels do. And it's very different between people. People with MS probably have more of it in their brain. It's fascinating. MS was for years considered a disease of the brain's blood vessels. This gentleman in Italy, is it, who's come up with this way of clearing the blood vessels and opening them up. Well, sure, that's great. I mean, it's a terribly radical thing to have to do, but we've known forever. We've known since Dawson. He's a hero of multiple sclerosis. He was a guy who had tuberculosis and died studying multiple sclerosis. MS is caused by a small molecule originating in the vessel lining. Well, why didn't he say then that it's formaldehyde? Because they'd only 10 years before even discovered formaldehyde. He was able to use formaldehyde to preserve his brain tissues so they wouldn't rot. Like all brain tissues are preserved from various diseases, including MS. And they still thought at that time that methanol was safer than ethanol. So why would you even think about this whole process? Didn't come to it. But they were looking for this molecule that was there. You got to read this. It's Article 153. Just go to my website, go to references, please read this article. What if multiple sclerosis isn't an immunological or a viral disease? The case for a circulating toxin. This guy didn't know anything about methanol, formaldehyde, but he's a scholar, a brilliant scholar from the UCLA School of Medicine. Everything points to the fact that it's got to be a small molecule. And he's pulling his hair out, just like I did. and saying, well, yeah, and he just has interesting things to say. In his article, he talks about, and talking about the old days, there is a noxious agent, okay, and this is Gertie Peters, this is years and years ago, one of the original researchers. There is a noxious agent exuding from the vascular system. There seems to be a reasonable assumption that whatever causes demyelination in MS arrives at the CNS via the blood supply. Yeah, it's a vessel disease. For years they said it's a disease to the blood vessels of the brain. Guess what it is? And this is the end of his article, which is good. Do we have any evidence as to whether there is or isn't a low molecular weight? Has to be a low molecular weight compound. Well, let's see. Formaldehyde is the smallest aldehyde. Methanol is the smallest alcohol. A low molecular weight molecular compound in the brains of MS patients that disrupts myelin. The answer is no, because no one has ever looked or bothered to look for it. Well, guess what? I've got good news for you. I've got the proof for all this stuff. You know, last time I didn't have the proof. I haven't got it figured out. But now I've got the proof. I can't give it to you right now. This is a little tease to get you to stick on. But I do have the proof at the end of this thing. Someone has looked at it now. The results will be clear to you. What was beyond their knowledge base, just wait for a few slides. In other words, I call this a triple blind study. What happened is these people were just looking for changes in the brain of people with multiple sclerosis. And so they did the perfect thing. They did an experiment that I wanted to do. And I was actually talking to a friend, a colleague, in Takaga. I said, we got to do this. You know, this is what has got to be done. Well, this very good lab did it. And they did it perfectly. And so I call it a triple blind study because the patients they were doing it to were dead, so they didn't know what was going on. The people who were doing the study and the evaluation didn't know what was going on. But then the people who outlined the entire experiment and gave the conclusions didn't know what the hell was going on. but they found exactly what I had hoped to find. And I'm going to show you what that is. Just going to take a few more slides. Okay, this just shows these leukocytes, sometimes they call them macrophages. They're able to eat protein damaged by formaldehyde. It's the proprietary basis of vaccine production. You know, when you're making a vaccine, these chemical companies, pharmaceutical companies, they do a few good things. Vaccines, I think, is one of the good things, although everybody's up and against that right now.